John Gotti, a name that once sent chills down the spines of prosecutors, terrified business owners, and even members of his own crime family. He was powerful, flashy, and completely fearless. But how did this street thug rise to become the most famous gangster of the 20th century? And more importantly, how did he lose it all? This is the story of John Gotti, the man who laughed in the face of justice until justice finally had the last laugh. John Joseph Gotti Jr. was born on October 27, 1940, in the Bronx, New York. He grew up in a rough neighborhood, surrounded by crime, gangs, and the idea that power came from fear, not hard work. His father was a hard-working but unsuccessful day laborer, which planted the first seed in John's mind. He never wanted to be poor. By his teens, Gotti was already running with gangs. He dropped out of school at 16 and started doing real work for the Mafia, small jobs, hijacking trucks, and strong-arming businesses. He was smart, ruthless, and knew how to earn money. That's exactly what the Gambino crime family was looking for. By the 1970s, Gotti had moved up in the ranks of the Gambino family. But it wasn't enough. He wanted more power, and he was willing to do anything to get it. Then came the hit that changed everything. In 1985, the head of the Gambino crime family, Paul Castellano, was gunned down outside Sparks Steakhouse in Manhattan. It was a bold, reckless move, one that only a man like John Gotti could pull off. But here's the craziest part. Gotti didn't just order the hit. He watched it happen from a car down the street. This wasn't just a power move. It was a message. He was now the boss, and anyone who questioned him would meet the same fate. After taking over the Gambino family, Gotti became a celebrity. He dressed in $2,000 suits, drove expensive cars, and walked around New York like he owned it. He was charming, funny, and had the media wrapped around his finger. The newspapers called him the Dapper Don, but what really made him famous was his ability to dodge the law. He was arrested multiple times, but every single time, he walked free. Witnesses disappeared. Juries were bribed. Evidence vanished. It was like he was untouchable. That's when he earned his most famous nickname, the Teflon Don. Gotti's secret weapon was his underboss, Sammy the Bull Gravano. Gravano handled the dirty work, making people disappear, bribing witnesses, and keeping the police off their backs. With Sammy doing the muscle work, Gotti could focus on being the face of organized crime. The FBI knew he was guilty, but they just couldn't make anything stick. Until they did. Gotti got cocky. He loved to talk, especially in places he shouldn't have. The FBI planted bugs in his club and started recording everything. And what they heard was shocking. He wasn't just talking about his crimes, he was bad-mouthing his own men, including Sammy the Bull. That was a mistake he would regret. Sammy Gravano, the man who had killed at least 19 people for Gotti, decided to turn on him. Facing life in prison, Gravano made a deal with the government. He testified against Gotti, giving the FBI everything they needed. The Teflon Don was finally stuck. In 1992, Gotti was sentenced to life in prison without parole. The courtroom was packed. The streets were lined with people watching their once untouchable king fall. The government had finally won. John Gotti was never getting out. Gotti spent his last years locked in a tiny cell, far from the luxurious life he once had. No suits, no press, no power. He was diagnosed with throat cancer in 1998 and died in 2002. He was buried in a modest grave, a far cry from the towering figure he once was. But here's the real question. Was his fall inevitable, or did he do it to himself? Some people believe Gotti's downfall wasn't just bad luck. It was his own arrogance. He wanted to be famous. He wanted the world to know his name. But in the Mafia, fame is a death sentence. Others think the FBI had been closing in on him for years, and he was doomed from the start. Could he have kept his empire if he had stayed quiet? Gotti once ordered a hit over a parking space. That's right, one guy took his spot, and he never parked again. The FBI spent millions trying to catch him. They followed him for years, only to have their cases fall apart until Gravano flipped. His son, John Gotti Jr. tried to follow in his footsteps, but failed miserably. Despite being a criminal, Gotti was seen as a hero in his neighborhood. He handed out cash, paid for funerals, and helped people when the government wouldn't. John Gotti was a gangster, a murderer, and a man who lived outside the law. But he was also a legend. His story is one of power, betrayal, and the illusion of being untouchable. He wasn't the last crime boss, but he was the last superstar gangster. He proved that even the most powerful men can fall. And when they do, it's a long way down. So what do you think? Was John Gotti a criminal mastermind or a man who just got too greedy? Let me know in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this video, make sure to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell for more deep dives into the world of crime and mystery. Some say if he had played his cards differently, he could have remained in power. If he had kept a lower profile, if he had controlled his ego, perhaps the FBI wouldn't have been so determined to take him down. But Gotti didn't want to rule from the shadows. He wanted to be a star, and in the Mafia, that's a dangerous ambition. His downfall wasn't just a victory for law enforcement. It was a turning point for organized crime itself. His conviction signaled the beginning of the end for the Mafia, as it once was. The era of high-profile crime bosses controlling entire cities was fading. Law enforcement had adapted, and the days of the untouchable Mafia Don were numbered. John Gotti is gone, but his legacy still lingers. He is remembered as a symbol of both the allure and the danger of absolute power. His life was a cautionary tale. In the world of crime, no one stays on top forever. What do you think? Was Gotti a criminal mastermind who got too greedy, or was he doomed from the start? Let us know in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this deep dive, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell for more crime stories. Stay curious, and until next time, keep questioning everything.